Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where there's a ton more of you here, but it's where two compulsive nut jobs come together after we've spent a week alone, hiding, reading about the history stories that we found unhinged, and then regale the other with the stories we've only recently heard. I'm Teresa. I'm host one.
I'm Angie. I'm host two.
Yeah,
I like being number two. I say that, it sounds weird.
it is weird, let's be honest, but I mean, look, you know your place.
Yeah, I love knowing my place. It works for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are
I
all
could
the
sit all
things.
the way down.
I mean, look, I honestly, having you as my ride or die is incredible. It is fantastic getting to sit next to you and be like, oh my God, what are we doing? Because I swear to
Okay,
you, that is
broke
my
it.
modus operandi.
I feel so much better about my own self then.
Yeah.
Because it's the same. It's the same. I didn't hit delete fast enough. Damn it. Is usually what it looks like.
What are we talking about now? I'm
You
confused.
when you just realize like you could have done something slightly different and it would have been better, but you're like, well, we've already done it now. Like
Yeah. All right,
that's
brain,
my
no
modus
going back.
operandi. Yep, we're committed now. This is
Let's
what we're
rehash
doing.
this at 3 a.m. tomorrow, okay? That sounds like the plan.
Can I pencil you in? All right, that's perfect.
Yeah. Hello, anxiety. I'll see you at 1.
Dude, I still think about things like from my like preteen years that were what, 20 years ago that I've done and or said and been like, God, that was mortifying. Why did that have to hit right now?
You know, there is something I think about now regularly, but I hadn't thought about probably since it happened. Um, I connected with somebody I knew back in elementary school. We went to middle school, high school together, but I mean, and she said, I remember meeting you in third grade. We were both the new kids. I was just a little bit newer than you. We were forced to sit next to each other. You farted, blamed it on me, and nobody liked me. And I'm
Wow,
like,
Teresa.
I I don't remember that, but it fits.
It really sounds like something you would do. So, like,
I
here for
mean,
that.
honestly, it's consistent with the branding. So,
It looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck. Teresa probably did it.
and I'm so sorry you've been carrying that since third grade
Can
for
I buy
literal
you a beer?
decades. Um, yeah.
I bet you this poor individual only farts in their own bathroom and never in front of anybody else.
And meanwhile, I'm just crop dusting my third grade classroom,
Living your best life.
being like, so asparagus only sense the pee? Are we sure? Can we test this?
Creep.
I mean, look, these are things, but it is your turn to go first.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I did Eartha Kitt. That's how I started the episode last time.
Oh, dang, girl, that's right. Okay, well, then let's get into it. Um, NASA is a source.
Oh, okay.
Hmm
Hitting hard. Something
because
tells me
it's been a few weeks.
we're not going to do Park Service the way this is going for sources.
No, you know what? I do not have a park source. And funny enough, this particular person might actually. I didn't even think to look. I'll have to go back and check. Um, NASA biography.com, LSU University has a write-up, and the spacecenter.co.uk has a really fabulous write-up for an astronaut that was not their own, and that makes me really happy.
Are we doing Mae
Um,
Jemison?
no, we are doing Ronald Erwin McNair.
Okay.
Are you familiar with him?
Sounds familiar, but I could be conflating him with another individual.
Okay. So he was born October 21, 1950 in Lake City, South Carolina. His parents are Carl McNair and a mechanic. His mother, she's called Pearl. She was a teacher. Now, a lot of my sources say that he comes from a poor family, as in like we're scrapping by, right? And we are also being raised in the South in the 50s.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. Um, early in his years, excuse me, let me back up a second. He also has two brothers, one younger and one older than him. And fairly early in his childhood, McNair shows a big love for all things tech. And at this point, he earns the nickname Gizmo, which I
I
think is
love
so
that.
cute. Um, so part of the reason that I chose him was because, well, obviously he's an astronaut and we love space, but as a renowned physicist, he is also just the second African American in space.
Wow.
The other reason I chose to tell this story is because of this little moment in his life. So, like I said, he is born in the South. It's in the 50s. So, you can kind of imagine what growing up as a black child in the segregated South and dealing with those pressures would be like, right? So, McNair's brother Carl relates a story from his childhood that I think really perfectly describes this kid. I mentioned earlier, he's already way into learning. He loves text, he loves science, and he walks to the local library. He's 9 years old. He walks to the local library to buy to borrow some books, as you do when you're a nerdy 9 year old,
I love
right?
this. Yeah.
Well, because we're dealing with the segregated South, the librarian refuses to serve him,
Mm.
but he insists on waiting. The librarian threatens to call the police and then does so because, a 9 year old is absolutely the most terrifying thing on the planet. And the police show up, but they are otherwise completely delighted and amused by all of this, as well as his mother. So when the police walk in, mom and him are just sitting there politely on the bench, minding their own business, sitting, standing, whatever. They're being polite, hands to themselves, not causing any problems. The officer takes one look at the librarian and is like, "Pardon me?" Kid just wants to borrow some books. So the officer does everything he can to convince the librarian to let him borrow the books. At which case, she finally relents and lets the little boy borrow the books he's chosen from the library. At this point, his mother turns around and says to him, "What do you say?" McNair looks up at the librarian and very respectfully says, "Thank you, ma'am." And they walk out.
Mm.
And I love this moment because it shows you what kind of person he is already at
I
such an age.
I like how you love it, and I want to flip tables.
I want to flip tables because I'm mad at the librarian, and I want to flip tables because they had to behave just so. Like he was still like mom turns to him and says, "What do you say?" And he is very polite in his response and very respectful in his response. Like none of that should have had to happen as far as like he should have just been able to borrow the books and said thank you, ma'am, and left at that. But I love the moment because it speaks to who he is and how tenacious he is. Like
Yeah.
from the get-go.
I hear you. I agree with you. I don't think anyone should be subjected to that level of prejudice and then asked to thank the person who subjected them to that.
I agree with you, except for I want to believe that that librarian had to sit with that for the rest of their life.
Okay,
Like,
I can
I
see.
hope that was a changing point moment for them. Like, oh, actually, this is just a child that wants to borrow a book about science. Like, that's what my ultimate hope in that moment was. But I shall move on. As a kid and a young man, McNair like rocked at school, as well as sports. He played baseball, basketball, football. He loved music. He played the saxophone in the school band. Um, he never gives up his love for science, and he graduates from Carver High School in Lake City, South Carolina in 1967 as the valedictorian and highest performing student of the year. And all I gotta say is, I think my kid's busy, but at least band is not on the table.
Truth.
One less thing Thank you, child of mine. He would earn a scholarship at North Carolina A&T State University, where he receives a Bachelor of Science degree in physics in 71, magna cum laude. He receives a Doctor of the Philosophy of Physics from MIT in 1976, after, only after, and I think this is so uncool, but here we are. Only after 2 years of his specialized laser physics research for his doctorate were stolen, he manages to reproduce a set of that data within a year. So he
Whoa.
can still graduate when he's like, that made me so mad. Like, where is his original research? But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, who is it stolen by? Like some
right,
putts? Was it stolen by somebody who knew what they were taking? Like, I got questions.
right. So do I. I didn't look into it. I'm not sure that there would even be any sort of answer for that question, but I was so bothered by that. But it didn't stop him. He manages to produce a whole second set of data within a year. So go McNair. He is also presented with an honorary doctorate of law from North Carolina A&T State University in 78, an honorary doctorate of science from Morris College in 1980, and an honorary doctorate of science from the University of South Carolina in 1984. To say he's busy must be an understatement.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. By 76, McNair is recognized as an expert in the fields of chemical and high pressure lasers. Also, in this same year, he would marry Cheryl Moore, whom he had previously met at a church potluck. And I just love that little tidbit. Like,
That is.
that's cute. I love that for you. He would go on to work for Hughes Research Laboratories in Malibu, California. This is where he kind of focuses on the development of lasers. I'm going to say this next sentence. Please don't ask me what it means. I'm not entirely sure. But he is focusing on the development of lasers for isotope separation as well as conducting research on electro-optic modulation for satellite space communications.
So if we've got a listener that can explain it to us like we're five,
Thank you
we're
so much.
here for it.
I know what each of those words means individually, but not together. While working as the physicist for Hughes Research Laboratory, he learns that NASA is looking for scientists to join their shuttle program. Of the 11,000 applicants, McNair was one of 35 selected in January of 78, and he completes his training and evaluation period the following August. So, like, I don't know if I've done a great job pointing out how much this man is a nerd, but let me drive it home just a little bit harder for you. He was a young person, only about 16 years old when Star Trek first aired in 1966, and he was so inspired. For those playing at home who don't know this, my desktop picture on my computer is Captain Pike and Spock. So this hit my heart right in the feels. Anyway, this is like one of the first times we see a multiracial cast. And the crew it's made up of many different people, and race is rarely mentioned or even really pointed out like it's a feature. And this gives our man the courage and belief that space is possible for him. And like, if he was looking for a sign from the universe that he should go to NASA, well, Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura in Star Trek, was the public face of NASA's recruitment campaign.
Yes, I did not know that. I know that at one point she wanted to leave the show, and I can't remember who, but they told her about the important work that she's doing just by being
Well,
present.
yes, she was. Could not agree more. So, just a few months after Gyan Bluford becomes the first black American in space, Ronald McNair would join the ranks and become the second on February 3rd, 1984, at the launch of the STS-41B mission of the Shuttle Challenger, where he famously played his saxophone.
Oh,
I have a picture. On this particular mission, McNair was a mission specialist. He was the operator for Challenger's robotic arm. This arm helps astronaut Bruce McCandless conduct his historic untethered spacewalk. Also on this mission, they would do 191 hours in space as Challenger orbited Earth 122 times before returning to Kennedy Space Center on February 11th. Um, and because this is another one of those types of fellows who absolutely must do the most, and being a physicist and an astronaut wasn't enough, he was also highly skilled in karate.
Yes. Do you know what style?
Um, it doesn't particularly say, but maybe this next sentence will tell you. He won the 1976 AAU Karate Gold Medal and 5 regional championships, eventually achieving the rank of fifth degree black belt. Does that help fill in the
I
blanks?
mean, it doesn't help a whole lot, but
Okay,
it's
sorry.
it's cool.
Yeah, that made me happy, and I knew it would make you happy. And I'm sorry I did not. I don't know what style, but I did think it was super fantastic that this guy just cannot sit still. Um, in early 1985, McNair was tapped for the STS-51L mission for the Space Shuttle Challenger. Now, this mission drew a ton of media attention because of its selection of teacher Krista McAuliffe. She is going to be a civilian payload specialist. Like in his previous mission, McNair was tasked with controlling Challenger's robotic arm to release and retrieve satellites that were to observe Halley's Comet. Um, but there's going to be multiple delays. Challenger would end up launching from Cape Canaveral, Florida, shortly before noon on January 28th, 1986. 73 seconds and 46,000 feet later on live television, the shuttle suddenly explodes, killing all 7 crew members. And because my heart just had to know, can I give you all of their names?
Yes.
Commander Francis R. Dickey Scooby, pilot Michael J. Smith, who holds the distinction of being the last voice heard from the shuttle just before the explosion, replying to mission control, go at throttle up. He was posthumously promoted to captain. Dr. Judith A. Resnick, she is one of 3 Michelin specialists. She, in January of 1978, was part of the first cadre containing women, as well as the second woman in orbit. Ellison S. Onisaku, who was the first ever Asian American and person of Japanese descent to travel into space. He was a group favorite who loved to share the traditional customs of his home, Hawaii. He is known for having full pig roasts that he would invite everybody over to. I love that. There is also Gregory B. Jarvis, a payload specialist who also worked for Hughes Aircraft Corps Space and Communications Group in Los Angeles. And our guy, Ronald McNair, who was just 35 years old at the time of his death. A presidential commission determined that the explosion was caused by the failure of a rubber O-ring seal on the Challenger's solid rocket boosters. This allowed the hot gases to leak into the hydrogen fuel tank, which is gnarly. Um, in 2004, McNair and the rest of the Challenger crew members were posthumously awarded with the Congressional Space Medal of Honor by President George W. Bush. And Space Center UK has to say this about his legacy, and I just loved it so much that I included all of it. Quote, throughout Ronald's adult life, he had continued to pursue various extracurricular interests. He was a 5-time regional champion in karate and had maintained a lifelong love of the saxophone, becoming an accomplished player. He was famously photographed playing his saxophone during his first flight in '84. Ahead of his '86 flight, he had been collaborating with renowned electronic musician and composer Jean-Michel Jarre and was due to record a saxophone solo for Jarre's upcoming album While in Space. After Ronald's death, Jarre renamed the track that would have included his contribution as Last Rendezvous, Ron's Piece, and included a dedication to Ronald and his fellow Challenger crewmates on the album's liner notes. As one of the first African American astronauts, Ronald McNair was an inspirational figure and a pioneer of the in the increasingly diverse astronaut corps we see today. A huge number of public buildings and parks have been named in his honor. Perhaps most prominently in 2011, the very same library that he had visited as a 9-year-old was renamed the Ronald McNair Life History Center, a fitting
Yes.
tribute to the small boy who had been initially refused service for just the color of his skin, is now being celebrated for his inspirational achievements. And I have a couple of pictures.
Please and thank you.
You're welcome. Allow me to just click. Okay. So this photo is his crew. He is in the bottom right.
I
I
could have
think
figured
this is,
that. He's literally the only black man in the
yeah,
photo.
I guess that's true. Yeah. I think this is a fairly famous photo. I've seen it before, but I just didn't make the connection when I had
Yeah.
seen the photo. And then, so the photo she's looking at features all seven members of the crew. They've got their helmets, in their hands, and there is a shuttle, uh, what
Model.
would you call it? Like a shuttle
Yeah,
model.
I
It's
want to say
sort
toy,
of,
but I know better.
yeah. Okay, this picture just screams 1980 in it. Like every bit of it is delightful. Their NASA uniforms look like the costumes we buy today.
Yeah,
That
honestly,
makes me so
they're at
happy.
Spirit Halloween.
Yep. And here he is playing his saxophone.
He's playing his saxophone, yes, but what Angie is neglecting to mention that he is in zero gravity. He is in fetal position with his back on what you would consider the bottom of the photo, but he is clearly floating and he is just
Hmm.
having a great time. He is Lisa Simpsoning it right now.
Yes, he is, in fact, living his best space shuttle saxophone playing black belt having life. So, that is my story of Ronald McNair.
And I just want to say, because you talked a little bit about um, Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek and how important she was. And I think it's important to recognize representation, regardless, like if you're part of a marginalized community, like if you're a part of an ethnic marginalized community, then you don't get to leave your identity at home. That comes with you wherever you go. And so seeing somebody who mirrors one of your identities or a facet of your identity doing something that felt unattainable is super important.
Oh my gosh. Can I just, this is going to sound so lame, but I didn't realize how important it was until we were in the theaters watching Avengers Endgame and you see the scene with all of the female superheroes. That's when I was like, oh, I get it. I fully get it. Like, th they're there. Like, all of the little girls on the planet, including myself, look like one of these, or could look like one of these ladies.
Right.
That is so important.
It is. And I know this is Black History Month. This isn't one of the other ones, but I was thinking about this just because of some online comment about, just what does this frame of reference of identity have to do with their ability to be in space? This was a post, or this was a comment on the Sally Ride social media on TikTok.
Okay.
And it was just like the fact that anybody who identifies under that lens now can look at her and go, I can do it because she did it.
Mm-hmm.
And in his case, I can do it because he did it. And he was able to do it because he saw Lieutenant Uhura.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love it. Yeah. Go on.
yeah,
I love it.
that's just it. It's just me on my soapbox getting up in my feels because somebody of the dominant culture doesn't believe we should identify things that separate him from that person.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I agree with you. I was thinking of that comment on TikTok as well, and thinking to myself, of course it matters. Because how many people particularly within her community, feel ostracized or told that they can't do something because of that?
Right.
Why? What's stopping them?
Yeah. Like, and you're not wrong that that shouldn't influence. The problem is it does,
Right. And
you know?
that's exactly the problem. Like, just because just because your skin color is a different shade, or or your eyes are shaped differently, or you believe differently than the main group, if you will, than the
Hmm.
majority
Hmm.
group of the people that you're within. How does that make you any less qualified for the position?
Yeah.
Like I can't, it baffles my mind all the time. Like I think about that a lot. Like why does why does being a woman make you any less qualified to go in space than being a white man?
Yeah.
Is it because we have ovaries?
No, I mean, but I don't want to get too off base because we are talking about, in this case, a black man. And
Right.
I know
Well, yeah.
I'm hijacking this, but I mean, so I don't want to. I want to be very conscious of that so that we're not conflating issues. But just the fact that there is systemic bias and we need to dismantle the system.
I could not agree with you more. And the fact that I think what bugs me in his case is that he was only the second and it was the late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
It took that long. Like that's what bothers me. Like we know that there were brilliant people available that could have.
Right.
But I think again, it speaks to his tenacity as a child. Like, no, nope, I'm gonna do the thing. I don't care what number I am. I'm gonna do the thing because
Mm.
I deserve to do the thing.
Well, I have a sharp departure from the story you told.
Okay,
Surprise,
let's go.
surprise. I'm going to tell you the story of Josephine Baker.
Okay,
Do you know who she is?
I think so.
Okay. My sources, The Guardian, The Extraordinary Life of Josephine Baker, looked back on in 1986 by Emma Beddington. The New Yorker has a brilliant thing that I used for the bulk of this, which is Josephine Baker was the star France wanted and the spy it needed by
Yep.
Lauren
Okay.
Michelle Jackson.
Okay, I am so excited. That's literally the only information I know, so I am so excited.
All right. At one point, Baker says, a black childhood is always a little sad, and hers began June 3rd, 1906, in St. Louis, when her mom, Carrie McDonald, who is a dance hall girl of local renown, delivered a baby whom she named Frida Josephine. The baby
That is
is,
quite the name.
isn't it? Um, I love this description. The baby's plump and came to be called Tumpy, as in Humpty Dumpty.
Oh, I am so in love already.
This moniker she carries with her proudly until after poverty thinned her into what they refer to as a ragamuffin,
Mm,
which is not my fave. The
I
identity
like
of,
plump.
yeah, honestly, a chubby baby is the best.
It's the cutest thing on the planet. Let's
Yeah.
when their roles have roles.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. The identity of her father remains disputed, and it became an opportunity for Baker to improvise. We've had a couple of improvisers who, they tell folks stories about their own lives. I'm thinking of Sarah Bernhardt as one of them, but this is going to be right in that same vein.
I was thinking of our nun.
Uh, Lu- the Lieutenant Nun.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
just
remember
totally
her
drew.
name, but I just know
Yeah,
that she is Lieutenant Nun. And if you look up Lieutenant Nun, you're going to find her
yeah. That I was literally
or
like,
them. They
what
have.
is her name? I just
I
she's
I
the
could
nun.
find it. Yeah, the Lieutenant Nun. Um, One of her biographers, Lewis, notes that she had variously claimed that her father was a black lawyer, a Jewish tailor, a Spanish dancer, or a white German then resident in America.
Okay,
So,
like whoever she wants to be that day. Love this for
exactly.
you.
Um, she shifts this myth and this, what is referred to as, I love this, ethnic promiscuity, is mirrored in her on screen roles that she's going to have later on.
Okay, get it, girl.
But as a wee one, little Tumpty wanted to dance, and the opportunities are scarce. It's 1921, and she'd fled the St. Louis life with her second husband. And she was all but 15 by marriage number two.
Oh, that's harsh.
Um, and this is a guy named William Howard Baker. He's performing as a comic Corrine. I think that means like choral member,
Okay.
I think. I say that out loud and realize I should have looked that up. Um, they're basically a traveling vaudeville troupe. Now, she wants to aim higher, and so she books a one-way passage to New York where she ends up working backstage for an all-black review called Shuffle Along. And when a member of the touring cast falls ill, because it was just a matter of time, she was waiting in the wings. She steps in with an incredible style. And this show has a very successful run. And then she lands a 1924 Broadway musical called The
Wow.
Chocolate Dandies.
Get it, girlfriend.
She's 19 when she's recruited by a society woman named Carolyn Dudley Reagan for a new production across the Atlantic, La Revue Negre, which opened at the Champs October 2nd of that year.
Okay.
Now, she's referred to as a dance sauvage, and she's wearing little more than what is described as a feathered loincloth.
Oh,
And
yes. Okay.
she enters on the soldier or she enters on the shoulders of her male dance partner upside down in a full split.
Of
There
course.
is not much left to the imagination.
Of course.
Now, this is 1925. She's in Paris. She is the featured dancer with a knack for comedy. Like she is just dripping in charisma.
She rolled the 20.
Oh, yeah. Charismatic natural 20.
Love this for her. And what's husband doing? Did she leave him?
You know, there's too many to keep track of.
Okay. Got
Okay.
it. Got it. Okay.
She's a serial monogamist.
Got it.
Okay.
Go, girlfriend.
Yep. Now, she's 19. This is her first experience in an unsegregated society. And she is shaken off her childhood. And okay, first off, one of the things that is said about her childhood in the St. Louis slums is that she witnessed the worst race riots and massacres that the U.S. had known.
Oh, wow.
So that
Okay.
is what she's coming from. And she
Okay.
looks at Paris as the antithesis of her previous existence, and she falls in love.
I mean, who among us doesn't when you get to Paris, you know?
I haven't been, I'll let you know. Um, Paris loves her back. And by 1926, she's performing at, I'm going to butcher this, the Folie Bergère, and she's in what is described as a girdle of gilded bananas.
At no point did I think that was going to be a sentence I heard someone say.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So she makes a fortune and she does the next logical thing. She acquires her own nightclub, like
As
you
you
do.
do. Mm-hmm.
Now, they here see her in, like, they see lots of her brown skin intersected by pearls in a skirt. Here's where we get to learn more about the banana get up.
Thanks.
Pearls and a skirt strung in tum tumescent bananas.
Please tell me you have photos.
I I don't have this, okay, but like these are things. Um, she's known to stroll the streets of Paris with a fellow performer, Chiquita, which
Of
I feel
course.
like Chiquita should have been the one in the banana skirt, but these are things. Uh,
Okay, yep.
I will say that Chiquita is not a person.
Got it.
Ideas on what Chiquita is?
A chimpanzee?
A cheetah collared by a rope of diamonds.
Even better.
I love
I
all of
would
this.
love to see how you would put a banana skirt on that.
You know, if I've got enough money to give it a collar of diamonds, I would figure out a way.
Okay, I'll
I'm
wait here.
saying money would come with ingenuity. Now, without anybody actually, if you didn't ever see Josephine Baker, you would see her everywhere in Paris because there would be posters as a doll in a shop window. Like everybody just had her visage everywhere. She was ubiquitous. She was the it girl.
Yeah, okay.
Picasso and Matisse portrayed her. Hemingway said she was the most sensational woman anyone ever saw.
Wow. Okay.
High praise. And he's not alone because we have a quote from E. E. Cummings: beyond time in the sense that emotion is beyond arithmetic.
Okay.
Very poetic. And Margot Jefferson observed that Baker was, quote, her own devoted muse.
Love that for her.
Hmm. Now it's 1930s. We're in Paris. Baker's really refined her stage presence, her whole visual brand. And she's got this show called Paris Qui Remue. I don't speak French and I'm trying to fake it and it's not going well. Now, this is at the illustrious Casino de Paris, and this is where everything is made plain. The feather skirt that she used, or the loincloth that she used to have, that's gone. And Janet Flanner, who wrote for a magazine in 1930, reported her caramel colored body, which overnight became a legend in Europe, is still magnificent. It has become thinned, trained, almost civilized. The last two words I think could have been cut. Those last two didn't age well.
No.
I was with you up until the end. We blew the landing, but these are,
What are you gonna do?
but
You
not
did
a,
good till we got there.
yeah, you know, not everyone likes this though. There's Austrian headlines that denounced, quote, the Black Devil touring country cities because this is happening
Oh
in
my.
Berlin. And
Right.
Baker is hounded out of town 3 weeks into a 6 month engagement.
Oh
So
my.
this makes sense, right? We can see the political climate's a changing. This is the late 1930s now. Her face appeared on a leaflet by Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels,
Of course.
who labels her as a representative of the degenerate art.
Do you know, can I just hijack this for a split second?
Please, please.
Do you know that the Nazi exhibit on degenerate art, which they created to show their people what was inappropriate, is the most sought art exhibit ever?
That doesn't surprise me. Like you just made it
Like
desirable
you
now.
exactly. Like do you realize what you just did there?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite fun facts about art.
It gets worse for her when you think of Italy because, or when you think of Europe, because it's Benito Mussolini who bans her from Italy altogether.
Rude.
And I didn't know that a country could have a wall of shame.
I mean,
I guess I could have figured that out, but
yeah.
all of this is happening. She is basically expelled from the Axis powers through no fault of her own. Um, but this is where a
That's
couple of,
fine. The French Riviera is nice too.
I mean, it couldn't, it's not very bad. It will be eventually, but it's not so bad right now. Um, this is where people begin to think of her as, what if we brought her in as a spy? But then it's one of those questions of how could a named target of the fascists serve as secret agents? Like, how could we even make this happen? The great news
How could
is
this work?
the fact that she's such a big celebrity, it's so well known, it provides the actual camouflage.
Perfect.
And her theater manager argues that when he brought up her name to the French counterintelligence agency, the certain bureau officials, they think they kind of liken her to Mata Hari, the Dutch dancer from World War I, who was recruited by the French and then executed when, they kind of find out she's a double agent. So that's kind of a huge bummer, but they're thinking, hey, honestly, we've done this playbook before. We could
It
probably roll it out.
worked. We could
It
probably
worked.
make it happen.
You'd need a better handler to make sure that she doesn't, turn coat. We don't need another Benedict Arnold, but this could work for us. Still, the counterintelligence bureau. They're in dire straits. They're cash strapped. They're understaffed, and they're ignored by political officials.
This checks.
I mean, one of the quotes that I found by the most recent biographer, Lewis, he writes, "It's far easier to gather intelligence than it was to get those in power to act on it."
This also checks.
Yeah. So when they're thinking about this counter espionage is going to require the deployment of amateur, loyal, and basically unpaid services who are designed honorary correspondents.
Okay.
Now, they kind of tell her this and she's on board. She ends up asking or she's asked to exploit both her Italian and Japanese contacts for any information they let slip. And this is kind of fortuitous because 4 years earlier, she had expressed support for Italy's invasion of Ethiopia. And at the time, she believed that this would help emancipate the country's enslaved people.
I'm gonna say Italy's invasion of Ethiopia was also not on my bingo card for today.
You know, I don't blame you. This is what I'm bringing. I'm bringing additional questions.
You're so consistent.
I do what I can, you know? Like, if
Hey,
I don't cause
this
you to rabbit hole, who will?
honestly. And then I would have no other way of learning new things, you know?
I mean, yeah, the internet just simply wouldn't deliver the craziest information to you. Now, as all of this is happening, and she's, let this slip about Ethiopia, um, this ends up really working out for her because that, what would be an unfortunate show of faith, gained the devotion of this loose-lipped attaché at the Italian embassy, who's like, I remember you 4 years ago. You said the thing, and I kind of enjoyed it. Now, she realizes that the best way to really pump him for information is to provoke and contradict him. So she's playing him like a fiddle. And in response to this, he'd fall into the habit of whispering reassurances into her ear. And whatever she learns, she passes along. So she just stirs
Love
the pot
this.
and writes notes.
Get it, girl, get it.
Now, as all this is happening, because this isn't happening in a vacuum, Hitler's troops are advancing. And she's maintaining her life in and around Paris for as long as she can, because this is where the hotbed is.
Right.
And here's a line I didn't think I saw coming. As she's doing this, she's making use of her piloting skills.
Oh, okay, because that was a thing that she did at some point.
And those were a gift from one of her husbands. I think two, three, I can't remember. But, I didn't write their names down because honestly, you'd need a map.
There were many. Okay.
Yeah. Those flying lessons come into handy because she's using them to aid transport to refugees in the Low Countries. And she's performing for troops as she's going.
Love this for her. Oh my goodness.
It's early June 1940. Baker, prompted, left her beloved city just days before the German troops start going through the streets.
Oh dang.
So they are hot on her heels. Her car is filled with petrol-filled champagne bottles, which
Okay.
is a visual. And she has an elderly Belgian Jewish couple that were fugitives that she'd taken in because everything about this just screams this is who Josephine is.
Agree. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not surprised, even a little bit.
She is doing the absolute most this entire story.
Love this.
Hmm. Now, her destination that she's going to is a place called Chateau de Messandre. And it's overlooking another word I'm going to butcher, Dordogne, which was a place that she had leased 3 years earlier.
Of
So
course,
basically,
right.
she's going to a previous Airbnb. Now, this 15th
Thanks for that
century.
visual.
You like that? I mean, because, like, look, oh, I know this area. We stayed there. We stayed at that cute little bungalow. But in her case, it's a 15th century castle.
I mean, when you're doing the absolute most.
Where else are you supposed to put your petrol-filled champagne bottles?
I mean, I'm imagining that her car was also a drop top, so she's got this cute Belgian couple and like champagne bottles out the wazoo.
And she's
Like,
popping corks to refill on the side of the road.
like that's exactly what I'm seeing.
Okay.
She's got these glasses, these ones.
Oh, the big one. I love
Mm-hmm.
those.
Yep.
So the castle had become a fortress once again because it's war. And it's harboring this little ragtag resistance group because it was World War II. And this is amid mobilizations for de Gaulle's Free French forces. Baker and her handler, who's also her lover, didn't put his name in there because, I mean, one of many.
Again.
Take a number. Um, they find time, here's a moment, for lazy canoe trips along the river.
Of all the things I didn't see coming.
He also teaches her how to use a pistol. He equips her with a cyanide pill just in case of the event of capture. But the lazy canoe rides,
I'm here for it. Let's do it.
now,
Oh my God, it's
what?
true. Okay. So, you know how we're always like, why is Violet so thirsty for Zayden? You're in the middle of war. That's why,
Oh,
because
you're
lazy
talking
canoe
about
rides.
fourth ring. Okay, okay. I was like, where are
It
we
can
going with
actually
this? Oh,
happen.
fourth wing.
It can actually happen. Lazy canoe rides in the middle of war are a thing. I feel so much better.
Look, Rebecca Yarbros.
Thanks.
What's her last name?
Yaros.
Yaros. Maybe she read the story.
Maybe she knew.
Yeah. Um, now the place that this 15th century castle is, it's in the free zone of Vichy, and the terms of the armistice required that all French security forces that were supposed to report to that newly throttled government because it's Vichy France. Officially, there's no longer the counterintelligence agency that recruited her, but unofficially, its agents have simply gone underground.
This checks.
And this includes the crew at Melendez. One
Okay.
fall day, Baker met with two former Bureau agents. And while she's doing this, a group of Nazi officials arrive at the chateau. Now, Baker shoos the spies into hiding, and she struck a pose as the lady of the house, hotly and impatient with the German intrusion, especially once the search warrant appeared.
I mean, I could fake being real ticked off real quick.
I don't know if I'd be faking it.
I mean, I wouldn't, but yeah.
Yeah. Now,
Even
Lewis,
if it's
who,
not my house.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, this is just the Airbnb you came back to. Lewis, who wrote about this account, he is pulling from a variety of sources, including writings of the resistance veteran named Gilbert Renault, who his nom de guerre is Colonel Remy, which is the bestest name.
Love that. Oh my gosh.
Now, her sheer effrontery assuaged suspicion because no, because she is so diva-ish in this response. They're like, well, maybe.
Her sheer effrontery. Thank you for that sentence.
Yeah. Just brah, like, and I can only imagine her going full Mariah Carey.
Oh, I'm seeing it. Yeah. I mean, we did just picture her driving down the street in her drop top pink car with champagne and a cute old couple in the back seat. So, I
Exactly.
mean, if that's not Mariah Carey, I don't know what is.
Truth. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit. It's November 1940. Baker and her handler, also lover, they make their way through Franco's Spain.
Okay.
So she's honestly just rolling through all of the hot spots. She's wrapped in furs,
As you do.
and her handler is just lurking in the shadows. Her cover story is that she's touring again, and she's assisted by Jacques Herbert, who's her nondescript tour manager. Don't pay attention to him. He just lurks in shadows.
He's just creepy.
Yeah. Now, alongside costumes and makeup, her trunks held a dossier that's written with invisible ink and among the notes on Baker's own sheet music.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So she is just doing it. Now, as she disembarks, Nobody cares. Nobody is really concerned with her luggage or the man attending to it. Instead, you have a cadre of French, Spanish, and German officials who crowded around her, desperate to see, feel, touch, or bask in the radiance of that famous smile.
I mean, the sheer effrontery.
She's just owning the room.
Good for her, man. I'm proud.
In Lisbon, she's drawing even more attention. She said, I come to dance, to sing, she told reporters. Her handler sees to it that the files that are collated, they end up getting passed to a British embassy and put into the hands of a spy master for London's secret intelligence services. I mean, she's just working it. It's now the summer of 1941, and they go to Morocco. And this is where she ends up gaining another vital link to Britain. But it's at this time that there's also a group of some wily diplomats, and she gets sick. She's diagnosed with peritonitis and is bedridden for a year.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is not what you want. But because she can spin everything into gold in her life, this ends up becoming an incredible rendezvous point as contacts arrive as visitors to give their best to this ailing performer.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And it was incredible because it's that celebrity and this global stardom, which meant that anybody could come in to pay a visit.
Yes.
So she's
Loving
the
this for her.
ideal intelligence hub.
Yeah.
She recovers. And when she does, she goes back to performing for Allied troops. And then she does this fundraising, morale boosting tour alongside just some minors like Laurence Olivier and Vivian Leigh.
Just some minors,
Just some minors, some A-listers that might still be known.
Hmm.
Her her and her handler, they assembled this final docket of intelligence for Free France, and she goes on to perform in Alexandria, Cairo, Damascus, and Beirut.
Wow. Wow. Mm. I'm
Now,
gonna need like a 10 season series on this.
she just doesn't seem real. Like the more you dig in, the more you're like, there's no way.
I also need Zendaya to play her.
I agree to your terms.
Thank you. Her nondescript handler can be played by Tom Holland. He's so cute. I mean, he
Okay.
already pretty much plays her nondescript handler. Like,
Yeah, you're
do
not
you ever
wrong.
watch like their paparazzi shots are freaking adorable. He's just trying to get the poor girl in the car.
I know. So it's 1947 now, and she outright buys that little chateau that she's been staying at. And she marries this dude who is a French composer, Joe Bouillon. Now, eventually, she's still friends with her handler slash former lover now. Um, and they continue to go on to support each other through the future decades and all the exploits they have. But for her, she still has some battles that she's going to fight. One big one for her is that she'd promised black GIs that she encountered when she was on the African front of the war that segregation would follow this war on fascism that they're fighting. So
Okay,
throughout the 50s and 60s, she reasserted her racial egalitarianism, and she's refusing to perform to segregated nightclubs. And she's
good,
shaming establishments that are declining to serve black patrons,
good.
which every time I hear of somebody doing this, I am so thrilled with life.
Hmm.
Now we fast forward to a very fateful moment. It's the Manhattan Stork Club, which is one establishment that was racist in how it did things. And it's 1951. Baker made a show of walking out of the place, and Grace Kelly joins in solidarity.
Yes.
Now, there is a newspaper columnist named Walter Winchell who's also present. He does nothing, but Baker reproached him for condoning the discrimination. Winchell is a supporter of Senator Joseph McCarthy. And he responded in print accusing Baker of harboring, quote, communist sympathies.
Because it's the 50s.
Yep. So
Okay.
her visa's revoked because she gave up her citizenship when she went to France and married whatever husband number whatever. And so now she's kicked out of the country. So the FBI ends up facilitating a dossier on her because they'd started one during her resistance work in France, and so they kind of reopened that file, which I don't I feel like I should have kept track of every time the American government has opted to open a dossier on its own people.
I don't think there's a way to keep track of that.
I mean, at least for my notes, I should have, but I haven't kept a tally. Agent Josephine, which is how the British journalist Damian Lewis, who wrote a biography, chronicles with much detail that she has. He says that as much as she knew, she didn't know about the resistance, that this book isn't necessarily just telling her life story. He looks at it as because the book's 500 pages long, so it's big, and it covers most of her work as a secret agent, and it's confined mostly to the shadows of World War II. It also doesn't use a lot of her own autobiographies because she wrote several, and all of them contradict each other wildly because
Love
she
that for
reinvents
her.
herself. But instead, this is pulling from memoirs by agents, interviews with veterans, and private family archives of the British spy master. And it's all pulled together. Some of these files weren't available until the 2020. Like, so this is some old stuff.
That's crazy.
She ends up getting the Legion d'Honneur and Resistance Medal. And the crazy part is, it's like we just know that these honors were, quote, not usually bestowed on ex-nude dancers of the music hall.
Didn't see that sentence coming.
I do what I can because
Impressive.
obviously we're winding down. This whole life of hers just really elaborates on how complex she was as an individual. You know, because she was so many things. One of the things I didn't really touch on is that she and her fourth husband, Joe Bouillon, when they buy the chateau, they adopt 12 children from various nationalities.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this is the Brad Angelina kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she did what she could to raise them. It doesn't sound like she's necessarily the best mom. Like she did what she could, but it sounded fairly chaotic. Um,
I mean, her entire life has been fairly chaotic, so I'm not surprised.
you're not wrong. Now, she does all this in 1956. She retires and she decides she's going to look after these 12 kids. Nobody believes it's her final adieu. And it's not because 1969, her money runs out. And so she's like, well, back to work. And so she returns triumphantly on stage, quote, even more attractive than she was in 1956. Now, there was one thing I read somewhere, I didn't put it in my notes, that she actually had the opera glasses taken away from people so that they couldn't see her aged,
That's
like,
hilarious.
and I'm
Yeah.
here for it. I'm here for that. So, 1975, she's celebrating her 50th anniversary in Paris with a run of performances. Oh, this is where she had the opera glasses removed. Now, she astonished her audiences with her youthfulness and vivacity, and she's dancing a vigorous Charleston. So, this is a full mood.
I think she has been a full mood. I strive to be her effrontery.
Solid move. She does such a good job that the audience applauses that first night for 15 minutes.
Oh,
That is a long time.
that's an applause right there.
I mean, I can't even do that on a treadmill for a good sprint. And they're standing and clapping and being completely enthralled. The music stops after the 14th show. She goes, dines with friends, goes home, and it says, amid the press and flower cuttings of her last triumph, she dies quietly in her sleep,
Mm. She just had to
which,
get that one more.
and she maintained the code of silence about the 7 years that she spent fighting the Nazis. and went to her grave, taking many of those secrets with her.
I love that. I love that so much. Could you just add her to my
Your to be reincarnated as list?
Yes, please. That was what I was going to say, but that's fine. That'll do.
Yeah, you know what? I changed my mind. Whatever I was going to say, that was it.
Yep. Well done. I cannot get the visuals out of my mind. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I did pull up photos of her. I didn't put them in my notes because limited bandwidth.
Yep. That is 100% what I was picturing.
So
She
she,
is
go ahead.
she's showing me a photo from 1950, so you can imagine the cut of the dress. She's got the full opera gloves. The Kate coat that she's wearing is draped down his shoulder. She's got the full diamond dripping necklace. Her hair
Hmm.
is in like one of those high ponytails. She is stunning. Absolutely stunning.
I think I don't know if that is the banana dress.
I'm not sure if that's the banana dress, but that's definitely what we know her. Like that's her probably one of her most famous photos. It's so she's got to be probably in her she's probably 20 here, 21, 22.
Yeah, it's
Um
1927. That sounds about right.
she's got the it's like a banana, it's not a banana. It's like a girdle sort of thing. She
Yeah,
is
there's
topless.
hmm
She's got the butt feather butt. I don't know how else to explain it that comes out on all the sides. Like you've seen this photo of her.
yeah.
She's fabulous.
And then that's a
Oh my
picture of
gosh, I
her as
love
the
it.
cover of a magazine.
From 1928. How fun.
But yeah, that
Oh
is
my
that is that.
goodness.
So if you've enjoyed this, if you're thinking, "Oh, that was such a wild mismatch of stories and I am here for every bit of it." Hey, hey, we like it. We are available should you choose to try to communicate with us via email at unhinged.historypod@gmail.com, or you could do this great little thing where you rate, review, subscribe wherever you decided to listen to this, and tune in next week for us covering even more unhinged history. And on that note, goodbye.
Good day.